One of the things that we come up on the buy side is sometimes we're offered only part of the business, sometimes we're offered all the business, sometimes we only want part, and sometimes we want all. I'm Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate. I'm talking to Tony Brown, a billion-dollar deal maker. He's going to talk to us about some very creative deal making. Have you seen the situations like that where you could reconcile those differences?
Ted, nearly every transaction we do now is not black or white, sale outright or nothing. When they're ready to sell, they think that they have to sell all or nothing, sell all of their labor and take all their capital all at once. What we're finding probably in about 90% of transactions, it's the space in between those two things where the benefit is for both parties. So we look at ways of structuring a transaction to add best value to everyone involved. And I'll give you an example. We had a business, they wanted to sell and retire. Now, it was on the market for about 2.8 mil based on a multiple of earnings, which had a substantial goodwill factor. And along came an industry player and they said, well, we'll offer $1.2 million for the business. And we just said, well, how do you get that? And they said, well, that's the net tangible assets, including the working capital. There's no goodwill in these businesses, point blank. That was their position. So we could have left it at that, but we took them up on it and said, why do you see this? And they said, we've already made 5 other acquisitions and typically half of the staff leave, the seller might leave, and in many cases we end up with new competitors out of both sellers despite their restraints, and half of the staff could end up in competition. So we don't see any goodwill, so that's why we're offering you the asset. So we said, well, it doesn't have to be like that. The owner, and we'd already talked to the owner, and we do this right at the start to explore the grey space. And we say, what would happen if somebody wanted you to keep a minority share in the business for a period of time, which dramatically reduces the risk for a buyer. In fact, in many cases, we say you could pretty much get 80% of the value of your business for the same price you would get for 100%, simply by agreeing to keep it. So because it massively de-risks the acquisition for a new owner to the point where they're happy with a slightly lower return because they're having significantly lower risk. There's another story, just a quick side take. We had a business was on the market for 2 million and the buyer said, I want to buy half of it now for $1 million and I want to buy the other half in 3 years' time. And they were from seas, but they were from the same industry. And our client said, I don't want to sell half. I want to go sailing. I'll sell you the whole business for 1 million. You can have the whole business for what you're prepared to pay half for. And the buyer wouldn't buy it. They said, I don't want to buy even half of it, all of it for half price because the risk is too high. So coming back to our story, our main story, when we say you can get 20%, you keep 20% of your business for free, it's not a big stretch when we see we've already seen 50% fail. So now back to this one, we said, okay, the owner is prepared to keep 20% of the business. So the buyer took it up to us really and said, look, I'll pay the full price provided the seller agrees to keep 30% and I'll buy 70%. And we'll have a mechanism, and I'll explain that shortly, to resolve the other 30% down the track. Now, our client said, I really only want to keep 20. So again, it could have died there. But we said, okay, your key staff have been talking to you over the years about buying a share of your business because we'd already known that in early discussion. We said to both the buyer and the seller, we suggest you both give your 3 key staff 0.5% each of the business as seed capital to get them involved. And there's a share of your business, unless the piece you're left with is worth more than it otherwise would be if you didn't give it away. So you could give away potentially 5–10% even of your business. But if your 90% left is now worth more because you've got a more secure team, then you still win. You're growing the value pie. So back to this story, the buyer and the seller both agreed to give a very token share of their business to each of their three key staff. Then those staff took up subscriptions to buy up to, in fact, they oversubscribed. They got up to 11%. So we had no trouble meeting the requirement of the buyers, and that is that the seller or the seller's team, in fact, it was way better than just the seller because it was 3 key people as well, kept 30% of the business between them. Now, what you don't want to ever do is get caught with a minority interest and locked in and never be able to sell it. So there are normally mechanisms with this happening, and it's all in the shareholder agreement that's definitely required. And if you ever, Ted, you would have come across businesses where they haven't had shareholder agreement and it's a very messy sale or exit. So in this case, the shareholder agreement provided for what we'll call put and call options. So the buyer could buy the seller's share at any time over the next 3 years, and the seller at the end of 3 years said, if you haven't bought my share, I put it to you with a put option. So they could get out if they wanted to. And the staff had their shares, and many of them were like it was gifted, but they have had that resolution in the shareholders agreement for the amount that they'd acquired. It came up to 3 years and everyone was so happy. The client, the seller, was doing project work instead of process work. They were living the dream, traveling the world, and although it's a little bit difficult today, but they were traveling the world, attending trade shows, doing business development, getting new suppliers. The business was hitting record numbers, well over double what it was when they first sold it. And it got to the end of 3 years, and both the buyer and the seller said, well, we don't want to exercise our options. We like it the way it is. So they're still there today, and our original client is still a 20% shareholder in what is a much larger business. So there's a great story just from being creative with that space between selling all or nothing.
On the buy side, one of the other things that we try to think about is let's not be too quick to brush the seller, the owner, out of the business. And if we have key employees, instead of worrying that they might quit or not be happy with us, let's, while we're negotiating the deal, make incentives so the owner wants to stay and sees there's an opportunity to have a lot more fun, because now the owner can focus on only what the owner loves, and we'll bring in the talent for the day-to-day running of the business. And for the key employees, if we can cause them to buy in, to own some of the business, well, they're not going to go anywhere. So your story is you said it, a living dream, is living the dream for everybody.
The way we paint that picture to our clients before we go to market is that we can help get them to the point where they can move from what we call process work to project. And if that's the bit they hate, that's the bit they don't like anymore, it's the drill, it's the bit that they want to get rid of, and it's quite often the reason they want to sell.
Well said, Tony. Well, thanks for this story.
You're welcome. Pleasure, Ted, talking to you as always.
So, Tony, how can people get in touch with you?
You can contact us, divestmergeacquire.com.
Hey, you. That's right, you. Have you been looking to buy an exciting and profitable business? Are you tired of searching, but only finding barriers that impede you from owning a wonderful business? Well, have we got some good news for you. You can find and buy the right business the right way. And you don't have to go it alone. For over 30 years, author and transaction advisor Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate, has been helping buyers worldwide achieve win-win done deals. Ted Leverette says, you can't buy it if you can't find it. You see, buying a business is all about search, because if you can't find it, you can't buy it. It's about being best and first. First on the scene with sellers, and being the seller's first choice, and top of mind for brokers and sellers. And most importantly, avoiding buyer competition. What about having to compete with other buyers? Well, you have to outbid them, which is a good way to pay more than a business is worth. Searchers do better with a winning business buyer marketing plan, and that's where Ted Leverette comes in. He'll help you prepare a winning plan, and then he'll guide your actions so you can find and then buy the right business the right way. But searching is not enough. The reality is too many people buy the wrong business, or they buy the right business, but on the wrong terms. That's why, if you want to buy the right business the right way, it makes sense to have Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate, on your advisory team. And one of the best ways to know what the savviest searchers and buyers do is to read Ted Leverette's books, How to Prepare Yourself and Find the Right Business to Buy, and How to Buy the Right Business the Right Way. You can get them at his website, partneroncall.com. Don't chance it. Right now, go to partneroncall.com, get the books, and schedule a free and private telephone conversation with Ted Leverette.